Hello there, it's Irene back again. I want to do just a little bit of a video here on some of the questions, or a couple of the questions that have been asked over the last few videos. And I'm sure some of you have more questions, so I encourage you to please ask. And I will address them on YouTube or in email, but I'll also try to address them in a video like this, just so you have maybe a better explanation of, well, an answer, a better answer. So one of the questions that Kay Chung asked was about different fingerings. And you'll probably notice this when you watch other people play, that they'll be doing something very different in the way they play a G, for instance. So the reason that chords are played differently, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is people prefer a certain way to play a chord. And the second is sometimes it has to do with the chord that you're transitioning to right after, or the chord you are transitioning from. So, for instance, with a G, I teach it with your baby finger on the bottom, and then your first finger here, and your second finger here. The reason I teach that with the baby finger is, as I explained in the beginning, is because the baby finger doesn't get a lot of work for quite a while, because there are a lot of three-finger chords. You could get by with just the first three fingers. But then if you get to a chord where you need four fingers, the baby finger has no callus and it's weak to begin with. So it's good to have it a little bit stronger and a little bit of a callus on it before you hit those four-finger chords. But some people will play G like this. So your baby finger still, but these two fingers instead. And a lot of times it's because they're going to go to, say, for instance, a C chord right after. So these two fingers are in the same position. A lot of people find it's an easier transition to go from G to C or C to G using those fingers. And the third way, well, that I know of, is the way I used to play G, and that was with my third finger down here instead of these two. You'll see a lot of people play G that way. And of course, there's the bar chord, a way of playing G, but we don't have to talk about that. So that's one chord. E minor is another that we've learned in that series. So I've taught you to use the first two fingers quite often, because you're coming from a G to an E minor, which makes sense, or a C to an E minor, and those fingers are in the same position for both chords. So that makes sense in terms of playing it that way. However, some people play it with the middle two fingers. And of course, if you're playing a G like this, it makes sense to use those two fingers. So, like I said, sometimes it's preference and sometimes it's just a matter of where you're transitioning to. The main thing in the very beginning is for you to stick to one way of playing it, because your brain is already trying to get around all these different chords and everything that's happening. So it's just going to get more confused. Your muscle memory, your fingers will get more confused if you use more than one way in the beginning. Later on, when you're a little bit more used to playing, then yeah, by all means, play it two or three different ways. It doesn't really matter, and that's fine. So that was the answer to that question. I should also say that if you have been playing a little bit already and you're used to playing a chord a certain way, then stick to that. Don't do it the way I tell you if you're used to doing it another way, at least in the beginning. So I had a question from Rachel early on in my beginner series, which was about singing and playing at the same time. Some people can do that easily. It just falls into place. Some people, singing actually helps them because it helps them to sort of figure out where chord changes are and what the rhythm is, all that sort of thing. So, and then there are the rest who, as soon as they start open their mouth, then everything falls apart. So that is because when you are strumming, for instance, you're creating a rhythm, especially that strum pattern we've been doing. And that rhythm you are listening to quite intently because you're trying to repeat it over and over again. So when you start to sing, what happens is the singing creates another rhythm on top of this one. And that gets all confusing in your brain, in your ear, which is why you mess up. So a lot of times what I suggest to people to do in the very beginning, first of all, if I'm singing the song, you don't have to sing the song. But once you feel like you want to try something, the step towards that is humming. Humming is less rhythmic. It's just notes. It's just sounds, but no rhythm. And that's why it doesn't interfere as much with your strumming. However, it still takes time to get used to hearing yourself sing or hum and play at the same time. You're hearing two things, so it can still mess you up for a little while. Don't worry if it does for a long time. Something has to become more automatic, and especially the strumming has to become more automatic, so you don't have to think about it anymore, and then you can start singing on top of the song. Now, some people, it takes a very long time for that to happen, so don't do it if it messes you up. You're learning to play guitar, and of course you'd love to sing along, but the guitar is the thing that has to be established first before you can start to sing. So that is my perspective on singing and playing. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about the idea that I'm kind of going one after the other with these videos, but some of you might be overwhelmed at a certain point, which is why I really, really encourage you to stick with one video. Whatever you're working on, stick with that until you're ready to do something different. And it's just because I'm doing this because I'm trying to get a lot done. And in a couple of weeks, I will be back to teaching again. I won't have a full roster of students, but I want to get as much done as I can before I start teaching again, just so there's enough of them for you to work on. But that doesn't mean I expect you to be playing and working on every new video as I release it. You have to slow down and don't be frustrated by going on to something that you're not ready for. I've said this in my videos before. I can't see your progression, so you have to judge for yourself. And sometimes that's a little difficult. But if it's really frustrating you, then you're going too far too fast. So slow down, stick with, a prior video until you feel, okay, I'm starting to get this. I'm starting to get the feel of it. And then move on to the next one. Because if you get frustrated too early, too much, you're just going to walk away from it. And we don't want that. Now, there are going to be certain people who just don't take to it. That's okay, too. If it's not your thing, don't do it because, you hate it. Don't do it if you hate it. Just let it go. There's lots of times when I, start teaching somebody who's brand new. And that's why I always say, give it a month with me teaching once a week to see if you take to it, if it works for you. And in fact, I even encourage people, instead of buying guitars, to rent them for that very reason, because they might find after a month, nah, it's not for me. I'm really not, wanting to play. It's not my thing. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's not a failure. It just means it's not your thing. But for the rest of you who really want to play, you have to learn to pace yourself. I'm going to do another video shortly, another song, and so whenever you are ready, you can try that one out. I will be probably doing that today, today is May the 11th, or tomorrow, the 12th. So hang in there and keep playing, and we'll see you soon.